Hi, and welcome back to Nostalgia Academy, where we cover artists from the late 70s to the 2000s and beyond, both known and unknown. And, sometimes the unknown ones are even more fun. Today we have one that's kind of special to me, and you will soon find out why. Now, first, can you name me a band that changed its front-facing, popular lead singer only to replace them and still be successful? I can only think of Van Halen and maybe Fleetwood Mac, if you want to get technical about it. It usually doesn't work out. Just ask the NXS. Well, today's band is no different, because I'm talking about the 10,000 Maniacs. And this one's kind of close to my heart. 10,000 Maniacs they sounded like no other band. And when we talk about alternative music, back in the day, alternative music was basically college rock, right? There was no alternative section in the record store. So whenever you turned on college rock, you could hear English Beat next to REM, next to Depeche Mode, next to The Cure, next to the Smiths, next to the Smithereens. They all sounded different, but they all kind of sounded like they worked together, because you always kind of heard them side by side on college radio. And that's where I'm coming at with the angle of alternative music. And the 10,000 Maniacs fit in that alternative music non-genre, but they didn't sound like anybody else, and nobody since then has really sounded like them. So let's dig into them a little bit. 10,000 Maniacs were founded in 1981 in Jamestown, New York, as a band called Still Life. They were made up of Dennis Drew on keyboards, Steve Gustafson on bass, Chet Cardinale on drums, Robert Buck on guitar, and Buck's ex-wife, Terry Newhouse. They later invited a very young 17-year-old Natalie Merchant to come sing with them. Again, only 17 years old. And they kind of, I guess, blew her away, because she became their main lead singer for years and years. In fact, their only lead singer for years and years. Don Lombardo later joined on guitars, and the lineup was set once Jerry Augustiniak joined as their permanent drummer. They were defined as folk rock meets Django pop, but around here we say alternative, because they weren't on the radio, and they didn't sound like anything on the radio. And they sounded like nothing else, and they made a wonderful noise together. So they got their name, you're probably wondering, from a 1964 film called 2000 Maniacs. It was a low-budget horror movie, apparently. Well, they just multiplied that by 5, and there you got 10,000 of those Maniacs. Now, going into their records, I'm not going to go deep into every record, otherwise this video will be like 40 minutes long. They started with a EP called Human Conflict, number 5. That was released in 1982. It had 5 songs on it. I don't know anything about this record. I've never heard it. I never owned it. Didn't even know about it until I started doing research for this. I know that it has the song Planned Obsolescence and a song called Tension that might or might not be a precursor to the song Tension Makes a Tangle, which would later appear on the album The Wishing Chair. Now, their first actual album, full length, was in 1983. It's called Secrets of the I Ching. I don't own this album either, and I've never listened to it. I do know that the band apparently was trying out many different styles at the time, so I eventually need to check into it. I did see that on the track list that Grey Victory, Bhaktari, and My Mother the War would all later appear on The Wishing Chair. Now, in 1985, this is where it gets good for me. This is my first 10,000 Maniacs encounter. This was with the album The Wishing Chair. I discovered the cassette at Prism Records in North Charleston, and if you knew anything about Prism, it's a dive record store. I mean, if you want to talk about a dive store or a dive bar type atmosphere, that was the place. It was owned by an albino hippie dude, and they would sell quote unquote record cleaner that would mess you up if you sniffed it. Yeah, a fun place. But they had lots of imports, and lots of bootleg records for sale from REM. Velvet Underground, stuff like that. But I know that I read in Rolling Stone magazine, most likely, about a band called 10,000 Maniacs, and they were talked about in an alternative fashion. So I picked up the cassette, not knowing anything about it. I was absolutely charmed by the sound of what they made. I was surprised that I liked it so much, because it's so different from any other music that was in my record collection or in my orbit. I was listening at the time to U2 War. The War album was big at that time, so I was on a different level, but I was absolutely charmed by their sound. Some of the best songs of that album basically all of them, like top to bottom. That's a good record. But Can't Ignore the Train is fun. Just as the Tide Was a-Flowing sounds very traditional, and I think it was probably a traditional arrangement. Maddox Table is quite possibly my one of my favorite songs of theirs of all time. In the Back of the Moon, that's really good as well. I think that's the only song that I know in the rock circle that mentions the word milk pail. So look for that if you listen to it. Now, the next album was In My Tribe in 1987. The step from The Wishing Chair to In My Tribe was a pretty big ditch to jump because they sound like a truly polished professional act at this point, not just a hokey little folk band. And not that they sounded hokey and folkish on The Wishing Chair. They're, really good. But this one, everything kind of came together. And this album has been on my top 10 perfect album list, along with This Perfect World by Freddie Johnston, The Cars' first album, and Shabu Shaba by NXS. Those are all perfect. This one, In My Tribe, is perfect as well. Rolling Stone, in fact, called it a poetic, heartfelt message about social concerns such as alcoholism, child abuse, and illiteracy, which I was okay with. Social messages seem to age less poorly than songs based on like current politics or any mention of current technology. Like song Russians by Sting, that kind of didn't age real well. He also wrote songs about Nelson Pinochet and stuff like that. Or Hey Leonardo by Blessed Union of Souls, which literally mentions DVDs in the lyrics. So just don't do that. Don't tie yourself to current technology or politics. Social issues, though, don't be too heavy-handed. Anyways, on this album, the best songs, once again, all of them, every song in this album is great in one way or another. My highlights are Hey Jack Kerouac, that's always great. Like the Weather, which is probably my favorite 10,000 Maniacs song, and the only one that I listen to regularly, like on playlists that I put together. Cherry Tree, that's a good one. That's about a guy who can't read. Painted Desert is absolutely beautiful, and I saw them perform that one live. I'll talk about that later. Don't Talk is about alcoholism. That's a really, really good song. That was the first single from that album. And, if you listen to the album top to bottom, you would never pick that to be your opening single, but they did, and maybe that's why it didn't do as well as it could have. My Sister Rose is also on that record. It's a great little dance number in the vein of the sound that Frightened Rabbit would later adopt for the sound for their song Old Old Fashioned. They kind of share the same little shuffle, and I like both of them a lot. Campfire Song is a song that features a bridge that features Michael Stipe, who is featured as the singer of REM. It's a perfect circle. And if I have to explain why that's fun, well, then you probably wouldn't understand anyways. Also, the song Peace Train was on the album, but it later got taken off after Cat Stevens made some very, you guessed it, political remarks about the author Salman Rushdie. That's why I let my videos remain politically, safely anonymous. Videos from that album were Don't Talk, which is just them kind of in a hazy live setting. Peace Train, which I can't remember exactly. I thought they were like on a boat or something, or maybe a wagon being pulled. I don't know. They were like on a parade or something. And then Like the Weather. That video features only Natalie Merchant from the band, which might have kind of pointed to which direction you might have been thinking. Their next album was Blind Man Zoo. That came out in 1989. It's their highest charting record at number 13 on the Billboard charts. They skirt dangerously close to being too currently political with the song Please Forgive Us. It's a song about U.S. interventionism in Central America, and that's some fist-pumping, love-making, get out your convertible and head to the beach type subject matter. But remember, steer clear of politics if you possibly can, because it never ends well for either side. This album comes across sonically as the same as In My Tribe, but it's not as charming. It's a little more heavy-handed than In My Tribe, which sometimes artists will tend to do after finding a sliver of success, and then all of a sudden an artist will just have so much to say. And I get it. I do. You've got an audience now, and you think you know something. Trust me, you probably don't. The best songs in this album, it's not a bad record. It's just not as good as the other records. The best songs are Please Forgive Us. I know, that's the political one, but I really like the song overall. It has a classic Maniacs melody served up with a light touch that they should absolutely trademark that. They should trademark that sound because nobody else sounds like them. Trouble Me is an absolute lovely classic song, top to bottom. It was apparently written for Natalie's father. And then Poison in the Well and The Lion's Share, neither one are necessarily standout songs, but both of them could have fit in really nicely on In My Tribe. So I like that they they have a fast pitch, and that's their number one pitch that they go to whenever they just need to sound like themselves. The album is okay. I was initially disappointed in it because it was just coming off of the 1-2 punch of Wishing Chair and In My Tribe, but it's fine. I rarely ever go back to it outside of Troubletree. It's not bad. They just have better records, So their final album with Natalie Merchant was Our Time in Eden. That came out in 1992. It is a much better record than I remember. I was stationed in Arkansas in the Air Force when that came out, and I remember liking it, but not loving it. But it is easily their third best album, at least in my mind. Could be second, but I'm putting it third for now. Hit-wise, it was their biggest album. They released it with These Are Days as the opening single, and Candy Everybody Wants. It had tons of MTV and radio play. Again, both of those videos featured only Natalie Merchant, which seemed like a prelude to her departure, which came not long after this record. The best songs on there, Noah's Dove, that's what opens the whole album. These Are Days, you've heard it, it's great. If You Intend, that's another classic sounding 10,000 Maniacs song. Circle Dream is completely different. It's a completely inoffensive and completely hypnotic tune. It's gossamer thin, but it's such a sweet little song, and it sounds like a lullaby in many ways, in good ways. Really, all the songs are at least very good, and most are great. And in my mind, this was the actual spiritual follow-up to In My Tribe. Rather than the rehash of Blind Man Zoo, Blind Man Zoo had the feeling of like treading water, whereas Our Time in Eden sounds like an actual developmental work was brought to the project. So I really liked that one a lot. And going back and listening to it, I don't know why I didn't love it back in the day. In '83, they came out with MTV Unplugged. This is a really solid Unplugged record. I don't have all of the Unplugged albums, but I know that Rod Stewart and REM were like my two of my favorites. I know Nirvana did it, The Cure did it also, but Rod Stewart, probably my favorite. 10,000 Maniacs might be my second favorite. It's really good. The set list is solid. Most of it, I think, was from the latest three records, In My Tribe, Blind Man Zoo, and Our Time in Eden. It's not bad at all. It's a good listen. I never go back to it. So after that, Natalie Merchant left the band, and what is the band to do to carry on? That's where Mary Ramsey walks in the room. Now, Mary Ramsey was a perfect replacement for Natalie Merchant. She played viola and performed vocals on the MTV Unplugged show and record. She sounds pretty close to Natalie Merchant, which is part of the problem. She sounds pretty close, but some of the syllables and the affectations of certain phrases just gives the game away. It's not Natalie, and you know it when you hear it, even though it sounds kind of like her. But it's more like a Maniacs cover band, which ain't bad, but it's just not quite the same. So first time I heard them was with the album 1997's Love Among the Ruins. It perfectly sounds almost like every other Maniacs song, but adds some drum machines and some other flares to update it a little bit. It is aggressively unoffensive, which is fine. It's fine. If this was put out by a band like Sixpence None the Richer, it might be one of their better albums. Unfortunately, it was put out by a band called 10,000 Maniacs. And that's not to bag on this record. It is marvelously okay. Some songs are absolute standouts. In fact, like Rainy Day is charming and forgettable at the same time, with a pretty satisfying bridge right near the end. Love Among the Ruins is fine. It's one of those three songs. It's one of them that was co-written by the great Jules Shear, which I only learned about while working on this video. Jules Shear is one of my favorite songwriters of all time, and he wrote three of the songs from this record, and they don't stand out like they should. I'll just be honest. More Than This was the cover of the Roxy Music classic. That got a lot of flack when it was first released. But even though the Roxy Music original is one of the best songs of all time, I think Mary and the Maniacs do a fine version of it here. It's probably the only song from this record that I go back to on a regular basis. Big Star sounds like it could have fit right on In My Tribe. In fact, if you were to bring Natalie back to re-record the vocals for this album, it would probably just start right where they left off with Our Time in Eden. It's that good musically. You might have to polish the lyrics up a little bit. Mary's not as good a lyricist, but she does a really decent job singing on the record. So, I don't blame her for them not growing the fan base after Natalie left. It's just really hard to replace the face of a band. In 1999, they put out The Earth Pressed Flat, basically a continuation of Love Among the Ruins. It's equally as unoffensive, and it brings back some of their earlier sounds. The lyrics are still not as punchy as Natalie Merchant, but it's a solid record. The best songs on it, probably On and On. It could have been on The Wishing Chair. It goes that far back to the wonderful original sound of theirs. In the Quiet Morning feels the same. Most of this album kind of feels the same. That's both good and bad. It reminds you of the things that you've heard from them before without breaking too much new ground to make it sound too new. It's kind of the Star Wars problem. If you make a Star Wars movie too much like the others, then you're doing fan service. If you make it too different, then it's no longer Star Wars-y. It's just how it works sometimes. Ask any act that's tried to change their sound, they get pushback all the time. Time Turns is another one of them songs that it's really something different. It's got the backwards guitar and melodic swells. It's quietly created. It's a really good song. Hidden in My Heart is one that they could have written, recorded, and mixed while on a lunch break. But when they do the Maniac sound, and only that, it just comes across as effortless. It's like a breeze going past you. They could just make the song in their sleep. In fact, you could put this album on while doing housework, listen to the whole thing and go, hey, that was actually pretty good. That wasn't bad. But you wouldn't be able to recall even one song. And there's no shame in that. It's workmanlike. It's well crafted. It's enjoyable. It just is what it is. It's just one of their records. Now in 2013, they released one called Music from the Motion Picture. Now every album that I'm mentioning from here on out, I've not heard. I've heard maybe snippets of. I know nothing about it, having never listened to it. Playing the intro from a couple of songs, and it does sound interesting. The song Gold is one where they have one of the male members of the group doing lead vocals, I do believe, unless it's a guest vocalist. It sounds pretty good. I'll need to dig into this one because it could be a fun listen. 2015, they put out Twice Told Tales. These last couple albums, they couldn't have sold much past Friends and Family. I mean, the packaging's awful. It's on small record labels. Maybe they're fun, I don't know. But this it's nothing but cover songs of traditional British folk songs, and that could be fun. I spun a couple of them a little bit into it, and it kind of reminds me of the Wishing Chair's more whimsical sound, so I might have to go back and listen to that. I like British songs, like She Loves You, Yeah, Yeah. In 2016, they had an album called Playing Favorites. It's their first live album with Mary Ramsey on vocals. I haven't listened to it, but the set list looks pretty boilerplate. If it's recorded well, then I'm sure it's fine. One other thing I failed to mention, between 2002 and 2007, they had a different female lead vocalist. I guess Mary had left for a little while. Someone named Oscar Seville, that's Oscar with a K. She's now a psychic and a transformational energy coach. A psychic and a transformational energy coach. That's what being the lead singer of the Maniacs will do to you, I guess. So Natalie Merchant, she went on to record 9 solo albums. 9! I have the first 2. They're fine. They're not the Maniacs, but they're fine. I might listen to all 9 maybe in a few weeks and put together a video of just about Natalie Merchant. She's pretty interesting, say the least. In the end, I think both Natalie and the Maniacs band suffered in the long run, because who knows how many delightful records they could have come up with if they'd all stayed together. That's just how it works sometimes, On a personal note, I got to see them one time live. I got to see them open up for none other than REM at Little John Coliseum on the campus of Clemson University. Go Tigers! No Tigers. Michael Stipe joined them for the Bridge of Campfire song, which is cool. And Natalie was much more animated than had been advertised in articles that claimed that she would sometimes sing from behind the amplifiers due to stage fright or just wanting to be, different, She was charming. She was a whirling dervish on some songs and coquettish lass on others. I was thoroughly charmed. I like Natalie. At any rate, that's all I have on the 10,000 Maniacs today. They're an alternative band in name only. They really had their own sound that honestly has never been completely duplicated, even by their own selves. Like, even when the Maniacs, without Natalie, went on to do their own stuff, it didn't quite sound the same. That's the problem you run into with that. But, let me ask you this. Did you ever get to see them live? What are your favorite Maniacs albums? Were you ever put off by the social commentary in Natalie's songs? I don't mind that too much, but not everyone is the same. And if you don't, that's fine as well. So I've read a lot of comments of folks that just didn't much care for her vocals, and that's fine too. But before I go, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. I'm going to start putting links down in the descriptions to some of my favorite albums by these artists I cover. And here's why. They're my own Amazon links. So if you click on one and make a purchase, I get a commission. You pay nothing extra. Think of it like Amazon gets less of your money while Nostalgia Academy gets a tip. Together, we can stick it to the man. Until next time, always keep looking up because that's where the answers are. You guys take care.